overloading and saturating their system, AT&T.
Yeah.
And then they put these smart meters in, so AT&T has that, so everybody's smart meter broadcast every 20 seconds. So it just screws up, and then they put in this low to moderate income housing project a mile or two away, and it's just everything's gone to hell. And then they said, hang on, we're putting in 5G towers. Some damn fool burnt down 6 of them one night, claiming that they caused COVID-19.
Yeah, I remember that conspiracy. I didn't think anybody really bought into it, but okay.
Well, yeah, not only did he buy into that, he also said that the 1918 flu epidemic was because of radio, and the smallpox thing got brought about in the 19th century by telegraph. So I suppose some aliens landed 5,000 some years ago when the Egyptians first recorded smallpox and set up a telegraph station back then. Yeah, okay.
All right, well, at least, they'll get this dude his Haldol or whatever he needs to take, get him back in order. Let's get him medicated.
Probably since all 6 of them burned down in one night at the same time, it was a coordinated effort.
Oh, you think it was more than one person?
Yeah, I mean, they're widely spread all around the city, and all 6 burned at the same time.
Okay, all right, well.
And then I put that in context of that fool that blew himself up with the car bomb in Nashville outside of the AT&T headquarters.
Wow. You know what? A lot of this news is not trickling up here to Chicago. I'm in Chicago. It's either going past me and I didn't see it, or they're not putting it on the news up here.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff they are censoring.
Yeah.
The best way to get it, for example, a lot of stuff is to go to the website of the People's Republic of China for their USA News, which is more in depth and actual news rather than editorialization in most American outlets, including the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Washington Post.
Okay.
You can also find it on French English language reporting.
Okay. What about the BBC? I have that program, but you think that one is not as good as the Republic of China?
BBC is so sissified that they're even worse in some aspects than the U.S. is, though they do get more reliable on certain things, and they tend to, what shall I say, more objective.
Okay.
The problem with what I'm looking at is news media now looks like it did 45 years ago when tabloids first started coming to the country, where they sensationalize something and it's no longer news, it's just fiction based on a real incident. And
okay.
They have this thing that started off and has gotten bigger and bigger, and CNN was trying to figure out how to survive once the first Gulf War I was over. And they started making it entertainment where people, Tommy, what do you think we're looking at? I don't know, Al. Looks like a burning cabin here, but it's been burning for a while. Well, do we have any feeds into what's going on? I don't know, Tommy, but maybe what happened is so-and-so. Well, Tommy, since you brought that up, how about this? Maybe what went, and it's like, yeah, they're looking at the same thing we're looking at, a smoldering, burning cabin. And nobody knows anything, but they're trying to entertain you by creative speculation on what's supposed to be going on. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I have no control over that as of yet. So, I'm just.
Well, I mean, it's gotten that way because the stupids have been stuck on stupid, and they've been getting propagandized to glorify dysfunction. And if you want a perspective on that, the Nazis took control of Germany in 1933. Hitler got elected in a democratic election, won fair and square. But between 1933 and 1934, when they engineered the burning of the Reichstag, blamed the communists, even though they burned it themselves and they executed one guy as a scapegoat, they then implemented totalitarian censorship of all media, and they had between 1934 and the start of World War II, 5 years?
Yeah.
But you have to understand that the Nazis took their propaganda methods from the American motion picture industry, and that motion picture industry, expanded by television and other media, has been at work on us for about 52, 53 years. So if you can do what you can do in 5, think what you can do in 10 times that period with more effective methodology.
Yes, I've read similar statements to that. So that's
I'll give you a few things as we go on that people and you can use to check to see if anybody's watching you.
okay.
If you've got an iPhone or an Android,
I have an Android.
it'll work for that. But yesterday when I did my show, we were getting hot and heavy.
Yeah.
And you know what happens when you've got blog talk radio and you get to the end, it says goodbye, blah, 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 and blip suddenly drops.
Yeah.
Well, it drops me, but the language that's coming in my ear is the topic of discussion that you are involved in is inappropriate. Blip. And it cut off. So I had to go back in through somebody else's phone and do one of those three-party things in order to get back on my own damn show.
Oh, they dropped you. They dropped you.
Yeah, and
but
the
you
message
weren't ending
said,
the show on your own.
no, I mean, the message said subject matter is inappropriate.
Right. I get it. But from listening to you, I just got a little confused. I thought you maybe were ending the show and then that came on,
No,
but you were in the middle of the show.
We still had an hour and a half to go.
And they censored you.
Yeah.
And then you're saying they locked your show, locked your phone out of the system.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that I find interesting is people will see some stuff on YouTube. It's quite interesting. It's not the mainstream. And they'll forward it to you. If you immediately get to it, you might see it. But halfway through it, you get this thing. This video has been removed from YouTube. Or if you go to it, this video has been removed from YouTube. It's not talking about anything inflammatory.
I've seen that
Censorship.
Before. Man, you must be on some real heavy stuff because I've rarely been on the video and they shut it off on me. So
yeah, I mean, it's bad.
Yeah, please put me on your forwarding this this video list because I need to see some of this stuff before they start censoring it. You know, one of those things. But so let us get to kind of the meat. All right. So the other day you and I texted a little bit, and I was asking you how you felt about this this situation that Trump is in right now, where they're trying to stop him from being able to run again.
That's under the 12th Amendment. That's not under the Constitution per se. And I think it's disingenuous because if you they've already set the precedent of impeaching him. They couldn't convict him, aren't going to convict him.
Okay, so
I don't think, but the point is that opens it up for Biden Imhoff.
Okay.
There is a federal grand jury that has been impaneled since February 2020, and there's no way you can unimpanel it. The Attorney General can't do anything about it because the grand jury might be investigating him. So what they have in front of it is Hunter Biden's laptop, which if you get what you get from the People's Republic of China that's on there, they have released tapes, not just the porn stuff and him screwing Obama's oldest daughter on there. But,
come on, are you serious?
Yeah, that too, for real. But anyway,
hold on, Judge Joe Brown. You saying that?
No, I'm not worried. That's just salacious, but that's on there. But what's worse on there is this fool actually was allowed to get a segment of the White House tapes. They still have them, but unlike in Nixon's era, it's not just audio, it's visual too. So sitting in the White House is this Chinese government representative, and he's talking about this firm that Hunter Biden is working with. It was in the Ukraine, now is in trying to get into the People's Republic of China.
Yeah.
And the official is talking about $1 billion in cash that's being funneled through the corporation. And Obama, he says, oh, let me get this straight. I get 10% Joe gets 10% and Hunter gets 10%. He said, that's right. So 10% of 1 billion is $100 million. So what are they supposed to get that for? Well, the treason aspect comes in. The Chinese wanted the U.S. government to call off its aggressive Navy patrolling and confrontation of Chinese warships in the South China Sea. They had these little small islands, maybe 25 feet by, 15 yards, and they'd build little breakwaters around them and claim that as Chinese territory, and then claim a 200-mile radius until they've gotten to the point where what they're claiming is Chinese territorial waters takes up the whole China Sea, all of the west coast of Japan, all of South Korea, all of Vietnam, and the Subic Bay and U.S. Naval Base in the Philippines. So the U.S. Navy has been sending R.L.I. Burke destroyers in there and got aircraft carriers hovering and nuclear attack submarines patrolling it. And the Chinese Navy had been doing chicken matches to see if they could get U.S. Navy vessels to veer off, which didn't happen. And what the deal was is for the U.S. Navy to call off those aggressive patrols. So on cue, in the time constraints that are given on the tape, I read Military Times, which is I subscribe to it. That's supposed to be the official news magazine for the Pentagon, and some Navy admirals were complaining that on the date that's specified in these tapes, they received orders to back off of the aggressive counter patrols of the Chinese Navy. So they couldn't understand the reason why, and they took it as orders, but that apparently came from the White House as a response to Obama, Biden, the current president, and his son accepting $100 million bribe apiece from the Chinese to back that off. That's treason. That'll get you shot. Yeah. By the way, that has been reinstated as a penalty, firing squad for that particular offense. So then there are other things in there, and they're detailed emails and descriptions about the ongoing criminality in the Ukraine. Now, what they're trying to do is keep Trump from ever being able to run for office again. But the point is it doesn't say anything about past conduct. But if you want to open that, and they already have and set the precedent, be careful what you ask for, you just might get it. Now, there's another important thing that the news media is underplaying, and that is this. Part of the Constitution itself is the definition of the so-called supreme law of the land. All right. There are three things. One, the Constitution itself. Two, such laws as are passed by Congress to put the Constitution in effect. And three, such treaties as have been ratified by the U.S. Senate. So we have several treaties with the Ukraine that have been ratified. And essentially the ones in question deal with assistance, mutual assistance, and detecting criminality, pursuing and arresting or apprehending criminal elements, the prosecution of those criminal elements, and extradition of the individuals in question. And guess what they did 2 weeks before the election that the American media suppressed? The Ukrainian Supreme Court unanimously ordered that John Doe's be filled in on this long multi-count indictment, and the names came out to be Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. Whoa. And they are charged under Ukrainian law with extortion, bribery. This is interesting, soliciting, treason, and a number of other points. And I think if they got convicted, they'd get about 80, 90 to 100 years apiece. And here we have a U.S. president who has been indicted, and that indictment comes under a treaty, which is part of the supreme law of the land, that says et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So here you got somebody sitting in office for something that happened in 2015 when he was the vice president. So if these dumb bozos open this up by setting a precedent that you can impeach and convict for something that happened in the past that is not mooted by the person no longer holding that office, then look out, it might get interesting. I suspect that it is really going to get nasty when there's a reaction to the Democratic Party's gun control. Oh God, hold on. Let me turn that down. When I think what has happened in the past 94 and 2010, when the Democratic Party got too deep into this gun control thing, they lost both houses.
Okay.
Each time. And HR 127 is a draconian bill that I'd like to make a remark about, but it's pending and it passed the first voice vote in the House. I doubt it'll get through the Senate, but it's poison. Anyway, what happens is this. If they lose control of the House and the Senate at the midterms in 2 years, I think what's going to happen is Biden is going to try to make his mark in history by resigning in favor of Mrs. Imhoff. And she's going to pardon him and his son. And under operation of the 20th Amendment, that means Mrs. Pelosi becomes vice president of the United States. Right. Now, that's another issue. Why is it Ms. Harris when we had Mrs. Sarah Palin, Mrs. Hillary Clinton, and instead of Mrs. Imhoff as vice president, we've got her using a maiden name, Miss Harris, even though she's been married for 19 years.
Very interesting.
What gives there? Is that anti-Semitism? Or and one of the reasons I've heard from some Jewish friends that they couldn't support Sanders is because they thought there was no how, no way somebody Jewish would get in the White House. And they opined that all that mess about socialism was just a cover for anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Is it part of that thing from her so-called K-Hive, which is a bunch of drones, useless types that are enthralled by her, who think that being married is a form of slavery for women? Is it to deceive the Black community from understanding this is now a Jewish woman who started off as a Hindu woman, so that would kind of wash that argument that she was Black, which she's not. She's Hindu. She's of the Tamil Hindu. She's of the Hindu Tamil Brahmin caste.
Okay.
And they look like that. They tend to be, her complexion are darker, like her mother. And their technical name is, guess what? Indo-Aryan. You've heard of the Aryan Superman, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and the Aryan Brotherhood and all this stuff.
Yes.
Well, Hitler told a lie very long, very loudly, said they were blonde-haired, blue-eyed, but actually what they are is they're paper bag brown to dark with frizzy hair. And they are, in fact, the ancestors of the German population. It's just some others came in later and whitened everything up. But those are the original Aryans. But you see, due to that effective Nazi propaganda starting 100 years ago, we now think of Aryans as blonde-haired, blue-eyed instead of paper bag brown to dark with dark, frizzy hair, dark eyes, and looking just like Kamela Harris, who looks like a typical Hindu Brahmin. Now, is the fact that she's born in Jamaica or her father's from Jamaica make her Black? Well, I know this retired agent. He's married to a born in Jamaica, Jamaican citizen. Her parents were born in Jamaica, Jamaican citizens. Her grandparents are part of the English aristocracy, well-moneyed. They've got a drop-dead gorgeous model-looking daughter who is just super freak with looks. And this Jamaican citizen is blonde-haired, blue-eyed, from English nobility, and she knows Professor Harris, and she says the man has always been, to everybody, a good Hindu Brahmin caste person with some Irish mixture.
Okay.
So that is interesting. And she, just like if you go to St. Elizabeth Parish in Jamaica, you'll see all of these high, bright, and white people who were born in Jamaica, but they're definitely nowhere near being fresh off the boat Negroid African.
Got you.
They were part of the Commonwealth, and that's how her mom and dad got to Jamaica, is because the aristocratic grandparents were part of that group of Brits that went out when the British Empire ruled the world. And what do they say? The sun never sets on the British Empire.
Okay.
So when you go to Jamaica, you see people that speak Jamaican. Hey, Mike, what are you doing here, Mike? Hey, you want to do the Fosters? I found a place got Fosters instead of that awful red label, man, red stripe, man. Want to get the Fosters? And you get the, we are coming here from an interesting part of the Commonwealth. And you see all of these folk are Jamaican citizens, and you see Asians from Hong Kong and Singapore, they're native Jamaicans, and everybody in Jamaica ain't black, man. And they speak the patois.
Right.
It'd be damn fuckery, man.
So would you believe or say that once she becomes president, she will once again ignore the black community? Or are you saying, okay,
she's always exploited us?
Yes.
See, I happened to be out in California during her rise, and the atrocities that she's responsible for is absolutely ridiculous. My former in-laws lived in San Francisco, and they detested her, like some of her policies. They had these spates of liquor store holdups. So her solution when she was the DA in San Francisco was not to go crack down on the criminals. It was to close the legitimate businesses because they made attractive targets for the robbers.
Wow.
They have a thing with One West Bank. Soros was the principal investor in One West Bank. There was a guy, Mnuchin, who actually was in the Trump administration, and he and One West Bank were subject to more than 5,000 counts of multiple indictments in San Diego County, Los Angeles County, Ventura County, San Joaquin County, Orange County, Sacramento County, etc., alleging fraudulent mortgage foreclosures. I had lived in a place called Ojai, and I had 3 neighbors who were nervous as the devil from these fraudulent mortgage foreclosures. So under her power and authority as Attorney General for the state of California, she consolidated them and dismissed them.
Okay.
So George Soros sold One West Bank for $3.4 billion. He raised 17 million through one of Mrs. Imhoff's representatives for her campaign fund. He, his wife, sons, daughters donated the maximum under the law to her campaigns for U.S. Senate and for president. And Mnuchin and his wife and family donated the max to her runs for U.S. senator and then president. And it was a travesty. See, she's a crook. She's always been a crook. Now, in the 50 years I've been involved in law, well, 51 now, shortly. That's a half century. That's a long time.
That's exactly how old I am.
I have learned that probably the most singularly dishonest and disreputable class of people are career prosecutors.
Okay.
Some, when they come in, learn the trade. It's kind of like working in an emergency room as an intern. You learn how to be a doctor.
Right.
But the ones that stay on, make a career of it, not always, but typically they are some low-down scoundrels because they have not had to account for the down and evil aspects of exercising too much power with too little control. And lawyers have this thing that is permitted of them to argue any reasonable inference that comes from the evidence. And their threshold of what is reasonable shrinks over the years until it drops below less than reasonable and becomes outright prevarication.
Okay.
They are interested in winning as though the whole thing was a chess game. They forget about the people because they have become so cynical. And what goes on is la-di-da-di-dee. They cut a whole lot of corners. They aren't interested in the process of justice. They just want to win.
Right.
So they carry that attitude over, and when they get in other positions, they are corrupt, morally corrupt and bankrupt.
Yes,
because
I definitely agree with that.
They have been isolated from the people they're supposed to be representing for far too long. And too often they have become lazy. They don't get out and do their own investigations, and all they're dealing with is some higher order cop on the other side of the table, and that's it. Don't talk to the witnesses because the detectives have done that, and they give them a synopsis. They go to trial. They haven't seen the witness before. They don't know what they're going to say. And a lot of times you can use that to beat them. I know one time I was a hotshot defense lawyer, and I used to have particularly these female prosecutors who would be gunning for me, and I'd always win because they would be trying to try me rather than their case.
Wow, that's lovely.
You know, I would just act with humility. Okay, thank you, blah, blah, blah. And then when I got in front of the jury, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this representative has acted as a scoundrel. She has engaged in a personal vendetta to try and take down defense counsel instead of representing you, the people of this state, and the concept of justice represented by the lady up on the wall. They don't have a single solitary firm fact in here to connect my client with any of this mess. And you saw the travesty that American justice can become when nobody like you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, step in and intervene and say, oh no, hell no, we are not going to let this occur. We want justice. And remember, if you don't work justice and you listen to this person over here that thinks this is a game, the criminal that is a horrible criminal is still out there lurking around, and they may run into you and yours and the ones you love.
Damn. I love it. And then comes the gavel. Look at Judge Joe. That's great. That's great. So yeah, I'm very surprised at what you told me. And while we were talking, I looked it up, and Kamala Harris's last name should be Imhoff on everything. So it's so astounding that we're so controlled and manipulated by everything that's coming down the pipe to us that we're almost, I mean, even the people who don't think they're sheep have wool on, if you understand what I'm saying. So, man, thank you for, blessing us with all of this knowledge that you have.
One other thing, more than 50 years ago,
yeah,
I studied propaganda, and I studied it kind of off the record too. Yeah. I was a teaching assistant for a visiting professor emeritus from the University of Moscow. It was a woman.
Okay.
It was a good communist. She had been in charge of propaganda for the KGB when it first started, and prior to that for the NKVD. And she had been the second in command as a commissar under Khrushchev at the Stalingrad siege in World War II. So she was a hero of the Soviet Union.
Right.
She had two people she had answered to. That was Comrade Joe Stalin, premier.
Yikes.
And Comrade Beria, who became the premier but got assassinated. But Beria had been chief of the secret police. Those were her only two bosses at one time.
Wow.
So she was telling me about propaganda, and she says one of the ways you can tell when the propaganda is effective is when the targets start thinking of themselves in terms of the negative aspects of the propaganda. What do we call each other? Man, I ain't got in, man. In can't be no in, man, unless he know how to be an in. I'm not saying that word, but the N word.
No, I know what you're saying.
And she says also one of the aims of propaganda is to get the target to use slurs, pejoratives in referring to himself.
Okay.
And if you can get him to do that, then there is nothing worse you can say about him. But interestingly enough, she said, that person becomes a slur by his own existence. So about the worst thing you can call a black man is the N-word.
Right.
But we call ourselves that because we have been negatively propagandized for 50 years. And that means we become a slur because we identify with and claim to be the pejorative that's being used to refer to us.
Absolute truth.
And I see that too often when young folks start talking to me. They use the terminology of the oppression to refer to themselves. They think in those terms, and when they describe what's wrong, it's in the terminology of what's been done to them, and they don't realize it. For instance, right now, to be hip, to be down, to be cool, you got to be a thug, a pimp, you got to be the dope man, you got to, you got to be gangster, man, And those are all the sensitive negatives. We make admitted street walking hoes celebrity who talk about how they drug their tricks. We got a amateur porn queen slut who did prostitution for hire, but on camera, and we made her a celebrity. And they get to talk to presidents and become consultants in criminal law and criminal justice and social issues.
Yeah.
And then you look at what was going on 50 some years ago. Well, there were various reasons, but 54, 55 years ago, if you wanted to be a progressive, down young black man, you were in college.
Right.
Now, there were some practical reasons. If you weren't in college, you were likely to get one of those greetings from the president. You are hereby ordered to report to your local draft induction center as listed below for a pre-induction physical.
Right.
You're hereby declared pending the outcome of the physical as 2A, which means you get an all expense paid vacation to hot, sunny Vietnam, where it's 110 degrees, 100% humidity, all sorts of nasty, creepy things slithering through the slime and mud, and you get to wade around up above your knees to cool down in some human excrement fertilized rice paddies, So people stayed in college.
Right.
And everybody was trying to be cool. People wore suits and ties, and stingy brim hats, and everybody was cool. Now everybody looks like they just crawled out of a back alley, and they ought to be pushing a grocery cart with some lawn bags stuffed in there, sag, bag, drag, looking like a tramp.
Yeah.
And instead of having urban camouflage on, they got signs that say, "Come bust me. I'm a thug, I'm probably got some smoke, Oh man, Judge, hey man, what you think of this new move, man? Where they done legalize marijuana, man? Ain't that wonderful? Fool, you lazy as hell as your ass is. Like you need to be lazed up any damn more being stoned. What's wrong with you?"
Hey, yeah, I agree with you. And then all of that is testament to what you were talking about with propaganda being in control of us. I'm sad.
Decriminalizing marijuana is not a bad thing because it's laughable.
Well, I'm not just talking about that.
The problem is that this new VP, Mrs. Imhoff,
okay,
she made her career by giving out recommendations for the stiffest sentences in the United States for simple possession of marijuana.
Right.
And for goodness sakes, that's San Francisco. It's legal out there. But here's the thing, it's not really legal anywhere because federal criminal law supersedes local criminal law, and it's still against the law federally. So you got somebody in the White House who I saw 1972 outside of the state capitol in Dover, Delaware, when I was an intern at a DC think tank.
Okay.
One between Chicago, DC, and Delaware. I heard this ruckus while I was upstairs doing some research in this ramshackle, rundown shack of a state capitol. And I walked out. The first thing I saw was George Wallace. I think he was in a wheelchair. Faubus, the one that stood in this doorway of the Little Rock High School, said, "Negroes will not pay us here long as I'm the governor of this state," etc. You had John B. Stennis, a long-term racist. You had James O. Eastland from Mississippi. You had Byrd, who was Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan at one time, the Grand Wizard over the whole thing.
Yeah.
He apologized, the colored folks say. And you had Strom Thurmond, who was in the Senate. And they were excited to introduce the last of what they call, quote, yellow dog Dixiecrats who would uphold the long-standing Democratic Party opposition to desegregation. And they were talking about it. Who the hell is this? And then they got some ducktail wearing fool up there who started off by calling Negro children roaches. And if they allowed desegregation, these roaches would infest the schools. He started calling Negroes, and by the way, we've been calling everybody black for a long time by then. So he called Negroes are nothing but wild animals, and they turn our streets into jungles. And if I'm elected to the U.S. Senate, my likely partner here, Senator Strom Thurmond, and I will find ways to put these Negro animals in zoos where they can do no harms. We will fill our penitentiaries with them.
Damn.
And I said, who is this fool? It was Biden.
Yeah.
So
I already
anyway,
knew he was gonna say
and
that.
you see people keep talking about the Crime Act of 1994. I ain't letting it get away with that. See, there's the one in 1979. He and Thurmond put in place, and see, at that time, I was practicing a lot of criminal law, including in federal court, and I knew the impact on that. Then there was the one 1981, which was complete poison. Then there was the one of 1987. There was one of 1991, and then the 1994. That fool has been poisoned. Both of them have made their careers off of doing everything they could to lock up black folk. Now, 25, 30 years ago, the warden at the maximum security federal penitentiary here in the Memphis area, I knew him, and he used to invite me out to talk to inmates. So when you went out there, you would have this spectacle,
right,
where you had the federal guards around the perimeter.
Okay.
And then inside, you had these guys with olive drab fatigues, polished jump boots, and maroon fizzes, who were the inmate trustee guards to guard the people in there who had literally been busted for 1 rock or 2 rocks and received 5-year sentences. And you see, they, under Biden's, Thurmond's efforts, they had abolished in the early 1980s federal probation and parole for anything but youthful offenders.
Okay.
And for certain minor crimes. So what happened is, if you got a 5-year sentence, they gave it to you as 60 months, and you would be under federal control for 58 of those months. You might be put in a halfway house at around 54 to 56. So they got all of these kids up in there with, this is a maximum security prison with people who murdered over and over in bank robberies. You had spies literally in there who were convicted of espionage. You had international terrorists. You had all sorts of things. Some real cutthroat, hard-edged people. And these people had not been busted by the feds. See, because the feds have a superseding jurisdiction, what they would do is they'd get some 18, 19-year-old kid gets busted with 1 rock.
Okay.
And they would lean on him and have him indicted by the feds, even though the local black and white busted him, so they could turn him into an informant. And if he didn't, or if he didn't know anything, they'd just go ahead and prosecute this kid under the federal law. So here he is, 5 years for 1 rock, which if he had been prosecuted under the state system, would have been almost automatic, 30 days suspended, 1129 probation, $250 fine.
Okay. I got it.
So I saw a lot of that injustice, and that was before 1994.
Okay. Yes, I have a good friend of mine who spent a lot of his time in the prison system for delivering. You know, what I mean, he was involved in the drug world, and so I understand exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
but I'm not talking about delivery. I'm talking about just a kid walking down the street, got a little unruly. Cops threw him on the wall, basically conducted an illegal search, found one rock in his pocket, and instead of getting prosecuted by Memphis police, Shelby County District Attorney's Office, Shelby County Courts, which is where he got busted, the feds pick it up, and he's prosecuted by the United States government for one rock. And remember, Biden used to go around the country. Senator Thurman and I have made it so that we will really put teeth in these anti-drug laws. One rock, just one rock will get you 5 years in a federal penitentiary. No probation, no parole. You will serve day for day. One rock. And that was actually what happened. It was poison.
Right. Well, I'm not saying that we're talking the same thing, because he never was caught with whatever he was trying to deliver. What he was caught with was something else in his pocket, because the police was watching him and they prosecuted him like you're talking
Yeah, I
about.
know that happens all the time.
Yeah, and then he went to federal jail. He went to the Fed.
Yeah. There's all kinds of crazy stuff that happens wrong in the federal criminal system. See, I used to hate to try federal cases because, unlike every other state, the prosecutor, unless they can convince the judge that there's organized crime involved and there would be a high danger or lethality to a witness, they had to provide you with the name, addresses, and phone numbers of all witnesses they intended to call. And if they didn't provide you with that, they couldn't call them. So they had to provide you with all witnesses' statements in writing, anything like that, all investigative reports. In the federal system, you get nothing. Okay. You couldn't find out what anybody said until after that person's testified, and then you got 10 to 15 minutes to look over a grand jury transcript to see what they said, so you could examine a witness cold turkey. They didn't have to tell you who the witnesses were. They wouldn't. The only thing you were entitled to is copies of anything that your client submitted in writing. So fortunately, when you had a bad case, you could get this thing under the federal system a partial verdict. So maybe you'd have 43 counts against your client. You'd get partial not guilty verdicts on the first trial of 17 of them, but you'd get an idea what's going on. You go back the second time, maybe you get 6 more, and then you got the remaining balance you got to deal with on the third time. And by now you're supposed to do what you do. Like, for example, there was this black real estate agent, now dead, who was the biggest black realtor in the state of Tennessee. He blew the whistle on the Reagan administration for corruption that was inherent on that. So the day before the statute of limitations ran, they indicted him on 64 counts. And their main thing was supposed to turn on him having supplied loans to 6 people who used the loans as down payments on houses, but the provisions of the law in question said you could not borrow the down payment. Now, it turned out that these 6 individuals were 6 corporations run by the same guy, whom when we developed it, they tried to defend by saying he had only a 2nd grade education. Not only was that a knowing lie that the U.S. attorney told us, we found out that this guy had a master's of business administration from Virginia Union University. He had the contract for 6 city schools to provide the janitorial services. And on each occasion, he had gone down and borrowed $250 from the teachers' credit union, and we could prove it. We weren't allowed to introduce that proof, nor the fact that he did this other thing, until my client just blurted it out on the witness stand, and the jury said, oh, and the judge admonished him for doing that. So we went to trial 3 times. We walked him, and it stressed him so badly he died of a heart attack sometime later. You know, but you see what they try to do also, this, and you can blame Massa Biden and Strom Thurmond for this. They set up the federal criminal laws so a federal prosecutor can deliberately bring specious charges against someone with the specific intent of bankrupting them so they could not afford to carry on any further. In other words, you know you can't get a conviction, but you bring these charges so the guy will go bankrupt trying to defend himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of the worst things Biden and Strom Thurmond did, is to ensure that that legislation got passed.
Well, I know you may not be a big fan of her, but our Kim Foxx is trying to deal with some portions of that.
She is?
Yeah.
She needs to explain that sleaze action with Juicy Smollett.
Everybody ain't perfect, you know.
I mean, but seriously, there's some corruption involved in that, and I don't see that that woman is doing what she promised to do. How many cops been prosecuted?
Good point, and I would love to start seeing that.
Ain't gonna happen.
Well, yeah, all right.
How about her collaboration with your mayor, Lightfoot, in turning over community development funds directly to Hispanic street gangs who used a lot of the funds to buy some of those weapons stolen from the rail yards to arm up, started killing young black kids, and black street gangs armed up, but not as well, started killing young brown kids.
Yeah.
So what kind of stupid is that? Stuck on stupid. What kind of situation is it to come out as a prosecutor and say, I'm dropping these charges against Jesse Smollett, Juicy Jesse, because they're nonviolent crimes, and then all of the lawyers that started filing motions to dismiss, saying this is DUI, this isn't violent, this is shoplifting, this isn't violent, this is a bad check, this isn't violent. I'm filing a habeas corpus on behalf of my client who's in there on a non-violent case. This is disparate treatment. Why does a celebrity get this benefit and ordinary people don't?
Yeah, there's no real defense to those things you just brought up.
And see, you have to deal with the consequences on Fox with her dropping the charges against Jesse Smollett.
Yeah.
See, I interviewed some of those detectives from Chicago on my show.
Okay.
And that noose, they found out he was recorded on security cam video along with one of the Nigerians at a costume shop during Halloween week, and he bought that noose. You have to take it in the context of Mrs. Imhoff and Senator Booker introduced immediately after a request to retitle that so-called Equality Act as the Anti-Lynch Bill. It had been introduced by Conyers back in 1997 and had been repeatedly tabled. It's not an Equality Act. It's not an anti-lynch act. It doesn't mention black people. It doesn't mention lynching. What it is it adds a whole lot of things associated with homosexuality to protected classes. And worst of all, it opens the door to allowing pedophiles to be classed as people who are suffering an illness or infirmity, allowing it to be used as a defense to child molestation, child rape, and sex crimes against minors. And it also opens the door in terms of the language with about 4 more words added in various other statutes, and you would legitimate pedophilia. So I'm looking at Anti-Lynch Act just hours after that went down, and Kim Foxx doing something prosecutors never ever do, which is becoming chummy with the family to the point where it became so obvious. She says she's recusing herself. And then when she had meetings with Mrs. Imhoff's campaign and some others and Cory Booker's representatives, then she comes back in and she recommends all the charges be dropped because they are nonviolent. You know, see, that is why we got a lot of crap going downhill in the country, because of this inside stuff. And by the way, in terms of what I studied at UCLA in political science, that's how you do it. And you have to put it together. It's sort of like connect the dots. What's common about this picture? You know, they used to have in comic books for kids, what's wrong with this picture, or what's in common, or the IQ test. You got to be smart to do these things, but you got to look at the picture and connect the dots and say, oh, that's what we're looking at.
Right.
But you see, they count on everybody stuck on stupid.
Yes,
example. 3 weeks ago, myself, my niece, she's 55. She cleans my house, but we hang out sometimes because her husband works at night.
Yeah.
And we were in a restaurant, and it was not crowded because of distancing. And we saw some people we knew. One of the guys was at the table with a coworker. So we're talking politics and this stuff. This fool interrupted. Look, man, why don't we stop all this, man? Why don't we talk about something relevant, like the game, man? What's going to happen? Everybody turned around and said, what the hell is wrong with you? Well, man, I don't talk about this whole mess, man. Let's talk about the game, man. That's what's important. Your freedom is not important to you, slave. That's what you call me a slave? I said, yeah, I did. Don't you know who that is, fool? I don't care who. You better act like you care who that is. That old man sit up here and whip your ass.
Right.
That man been taking karate for 55 years, fool. Any harm, you better sit your dumb ass down. Plus, I'll jump you if you look like you're gonna hit him. That's my play uncle, man. That's Judge Joe. Oh man, I didn't know. Man, young man, act like you got some sense. You ever heard of Caesar's thing where he said, give them bread in circuses, feed them and entertain them, and they won't care what they get done to them by their betters? Well, that's what you're fitting into.
Yes, sir.
There's a big game going on, and you sitting up here looking at some young boys getting paid exorbitant salaries for going around and doing what you do for recreation on a weekend. Learn the real game so you can go play that one.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes,
He
sir.
got a little humiliated, and then he got humble. But the deal is, we got to look at something relevant, man. What's going to happen with the game?
Yeah.
And Atlanta Housewives and, Pose and Empire and all of this nonsense, and watch a black guy sit up hugged up against his white lover in a Ritz cracker commercial, and they kiss on the mouth, and then the black creature, he takes a Ritz cracker and he pops it in the mouth of his white lover. And I said, I'm throwing away every damn thing in my pantry that looks like it's from Ritz, anybody associated with them. It's like, that's their business. They got a right to do it under the First Amendment. But they don't have a right to suppress the rest of us.
Yes, absolutely.
And they don't have a right to come in and bogart your children and start talking about what you're going to do. So you know why they have these drag queens talking to these kids 4, 5, 6, 7 years old? Is because human physiology dictates that a person's character is basically written in stone by the time they get to be 7 years old.
Yep.
So in other words, they are socializing and acculturating these children to think this abnormality is somehow normal.
Right.
See, humans are higher order mammals. Every higher order mammal, from elephants to whales, has to be acculturated to his or her sexual role and position in that animal's society. Okay. So, son, you better get out of your mama's shoes, act like a man. You can't put on her shoes. What are you doing, boy? Don't put on mama's makeup. You're a boy. You're not a girl. A girl, quit acting like you're a boy. You act like a young lady. See, this is what you have to do. Right. Because culture reinforces physiological evolution. That's just science. And these clowns want to act like people just popped into the world day before yesterday, and they have a habit of co-opting stuff like fluid gender is a new concept, and basically the hard science is against it, but they push the stuff from some cranks who practice the stuff themselves and want to make themselves look okay. Right. And they do stuff like toxic masculinity. There was no such thing, but 55 years ago on UCLA's campus, I heard these feminist speakers start talking about all masculinity was toxic and how they could strategize by doing a little at the time. So all people thought it was toxic, and they've been doing that. And then they got into other stuff that was poison, like marriage is a form of slavery for women, and maybe that's got to do with Mrs. Imhoff claiming to be Miss Harris instead of Mrs. Imhoff, so she can reinforce the idiots that think that's crazy. That's also hooked up with their pledge to destroy the family.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember Nikki Giovanni, the black poetess, who went around, and she came to UCLA at least twice.
Yeah,
We
she came when I was
her
in
to two
school.
BSU meetings, and I take great pride in having cussed her fool ass out at one of these meetings, because she was saying, you don't need a husband. The worst thing you can do for a child is to have a father around. Find somebody tall, fine, and smart, get knocked up, and don't even tell the bastard he's the daddy, because if he tries to play daddy, he's just going to F the children up. So keep these disgusting male dogs away from children as much as you can.
Wow.
I told her she was a damn fool. Now look at it. I bought $24,000, $25,000 worth of tickets to a Black Alumni Association banquet UCLA Black alumni were having. When I found out she was the guest speaker, I canceled the check and wrote a nasty letter to him. And no way, no how. See, but we do this because we have the excuse now. The Army used to reflect this: yes, sir, no excuse, sir.
Right.
You know, now society, well, society used to have that. Now everybody's got an excuse. It may explain why you effed up in your head, but it's not an excuse to act like you're that way.
Right.
There's a difference. We've got too much of this entitlement. You know, everybody gets a participation ribbon. Nobody's responsible for doing anything. Everything's supposed to be given to me because I want it.
Yeah, these millennials wear that like a brand new jacket. They are so, they believe that everything comes free.
Yeah.
The millennials, you know.
And the children need to be allowed to make their own choices. No, a 6, 7, 8-year-old child does not need to be allowed to make all of their own choices because they are immature.
Yeah.
And you need to give them guidance and advisement. And when somebody says that, it's a cop-out because they are a dud as a parent. They're either too stupid to know what they're supposed to do, or they're too damn weak to do it. Boy, get up off of the ground. Quit crying like that. You didn't hurt yourself. Man doesn't cry like that.
Exactly.
I politic, you know, and I've been going to church picnics and stuff like that for 50 years, politicking one way or the other. I used to be able to look like I'm looking at you, and behind me are some kids. I can tell which one of the boys because the little boys yell and the little girls screech and scream.
Right.
Nowadays, I go to one and it's all screeching and screaming, and I turn around and it's mixed boys and girls, and none of the boys are yelling.
Yeah, I experienced that myself.
Here, boy, get up off the ground. Boy, get up off the ground. Act like a man. That didn't hurt you. You got to want to cry. I'll give you something to cry about. And they suck it up. Now, baby, mama knows you hurt yourself. You can go ahead and cry.
Right. Here's some cake. Something like that.
And then remember the old saying, men and women and children are on the Titanic. Who gets in the lifeboats first?
Yeah.
Women and children. Women and children,
yeah.
Does that include drag queens get on first now?
They probably would get their way in there. What you think about these transsexuals trying to play sports against women? Let's go to that. I mean, what's your opinion?
Disgusting.
Yes, sir.
Disgusting.
Yes. Yeah.
Failure to like there's one guy, he dropped the 360th or something like that, and then the next year he's champion competing against women because he wanted to get him he got some breast implants.
Right.
Still ugly as hell. No, that's sick because boys should never hit girls.
Right.
And I'm particularly offended by the ones that have jacked up some of these women. I got a personal vendetta against that. I have a very good friend. We've been close for a long time, and he's got a granddaughter who's a beautiful young lady. She went off to college, and I ran into her, I'd say summer 2019. She just gone off to college, and she was a sophomore. Mm-hmm. So I noticed she had her left arm in a real heavy cast, and she was having difficulty loading up her trunk. So I walked over. She said, "Uncle Joe, is that you?" I said, "Yeah, baby. What happened?" She told me she had entered women's wrestling And one of these drag queens had gone in and she didn't want to wrestle this guy because she was like 50 pounds heavier than her,
Right.
bulked up. She was in the unlimited class for women because she was tall. And she said, Uncle Joe, I didn't want to do it. She started crying. So she put her head on my shoulder crying, and I comforted her. And I said, well, what happened? So this fool had given her multiple compound fractures of her left arm. She had had 3 operations, and she was told she couldn't wrestle anymore. And that was it, and to take everything easy. And she can't even load her trunk because she was still in pain. And she was upset that the pain medication was interfering with her status as a student. So I just said, these low down SOBs are sitting in here. They punked out because we got taught boys are stronger than girls and you should never hit a girl. And these fools have forgotten all about that.
Right.
And they don't like, and see, this is the other thing. Back in the 60s, we had, I'm black and I'm proud, black power. Because black folk back then came to realize after their transition from being Negroes from colored, that we had looked at a lot on television and in the motion pictures that we saw that was anti-black, right? But we just said, to hell with all that. We have pride in self. I'm black and I'm proud. Now, 55 years later, you have these clowns who are deep into self-hate. They hate what they are. They don't want to be men. They want to be women, and they hate what they want to be. Or they're women and they hate being a woman and they want to be a man, but they hate men. So you hate what you are and hate what you want to be. And you're trying to put that sick poison in the heads of everybody else so they think like you.
Right.
But 25 years ago, a female psychologist and I were working on a project with sentencing methodology when I was on the criminal bench. And we started analyzing some of these female defendants, and we came up with this term called developmental bipolarity.
Okay.
What it is this, is natural women feel rewarded by doing certain things that only women can do, and they appreciate compliments for that. However, this feminist movement has been teaching them that those things are demeaning. And instead of feeling complimented, you should feel insulted and demeaned if these traditional means of satisfaction satisfied you. So they give them an alternative slate of things that ought to be appropriate and important to them. But when they get those things accomplished and they even get recognition for them, they really don't get any satisfaction. So that which they really want, they can't do because they've told it's demeaning, and that which they have been told to do gives them no satisfaction. So they just get all messed up in the head.
Can you give me an example of that?
Okay, here's a classic one.
All right.
You're a good
I think you're
ashamed of herself because why was she wasting her talents on being a good mother when she should have been focusing on being a good executive? So she becomes a good executive and then feels guilty as hell about neglecting her duties as a mother.
Your phone.
That we came up with. You stopped moving, the image froze, but I can hear you.
Oh, okay, because I couldn't hear you.
Let me give you this. Yeah, let me give you this. You couldn't hear me?
You actually, during the example, you froze out for a second.
But could you hear me?
I could not. No.
Okay, well, the example is motherhood.
Okay.
A woman is a good mother, her children are being raised right, but some of her colleagues on the job get on her about how demeaning. You just getting to be a slave to that husband of yours. A woman is more than being a mama. You need to concentrate on your job so you can move up the corporate ladder. Right. Well, she does. She gets rewarded, but she feels flat because she's feeling guilty as hell about neglecting being a good mother to her children. And she's starting to get calls from the principal about the children are a disciplinary problem at school.
Right.
See, that's a classic example. And where we ran into that was the fallout. We found that this type of mother, who might not have been trying to be a corporate executive, but something else, they tended to be the mothers of the dysfunctional boys that we found coming through the criminal system. Right. And they had early on divorced their husbands because not necessarily that something was wrong with the husband. They just been convinced that they were being demeaned by being married and that marriage was a form of slavery. I had noticed that earlier when I had clients would come in. I said, Mrs. Thompson, what's wrong? I want a divorce. Why do you want a divorce? He's boring. She's been married 19 years. What's he boring about? Well, he works 2 jobs. All he does is work. But you've got a home almost paid for. You've got a second home. You've got the first one's paying for itself because you're renting it out. You got 2 kids in college. You got the cars. What's the problem? But I'm bored. I need excitement. Okay, so she goes through the divorce, and 6 months later, she's back in. I said, what is it now? I don't know what I'm going to do about these bills. I said, well, you had 4 cars at your household. You had 2 houses. You even had a vacation condo someplace. You took vacations, but he was boring because he was working 2 jobs. Right. And now what? That, oh, I know. I saw you out at the club last week. That dude you were with, Slick. Yeah, I love him. He's so exciting. But now let me guess, you're working 2 jobs yourself to pay for the car you bought him, which is newer than the one that your husband left you with. And right. Now you got all these bills. Yeah. I said, well, you're a damn fool. I told you that to begin with. You know, you had a happy home. Now you ruined it because you listen to these damn fools talking about excitement. Now you got plenty of excitement and you broke as hell and you overworked and you're stressed out and you're about to have a damn heart attack. What is the matter with you?
Right. And you can't go backwards.
See,
right.
Yeah. And see, that's the kind of thing that I ran into a lot with that. And that's what I mean by that phenomenon of hate what you are and hate what you want to be. You're told that those things that are naturally rewarding are somehow demeaning, and these things you ought to have, but it's crazy. Yeah. I can remember a late friend of mine and I was sitting in Detroit airport. We were in the first class lounge and the flight was delayed. So we are looking at, both of us picked up an Ebony magazine just to see what it looked like. Or right. Essence.
Okay.
And they had an article in there written by a Black female PhD. It was titled, Enjoy Your Thug. Oh, girls, you have no idea how exciting thugs are. Raw masculinity. But unlike typical masculinity, since you are writing the check, you can control it. You can turn it on, turn it off. You should try a thug. So we looked at that and said, man, have they lost their mind? Now, the brother I'm talking to is a master of martial arts, but he's also got a PhD. Mm-hmm. And he's been a college professor. So we were both looking, man, this is sickness. And then at that point, which is about 9-10 years ago, we traveled around doing promos for my show, and we'd get someplace. This is Bobby on WFOOL radio. This is Take Care of Your Thug Week. Call in and let Bobby know if you got a thug. We got somebody on the line. Tamika, this you, Tamika? Yeah, Bobby, this Tamika. You got you a thug, Tamika? Yeah, Bobby, he's so fine. He smoothed me out. You let him work? No, Bobby, I want him at home for me so he nice and fresh when I get back from the job. Damn. All right, we got another caller. This is Johnetta. Johnetta, you on the line. This you, Bobby? Yeah, Johnetta, this Bobby. Bobby, this really you? Yeah, Johnetta. You got a thug at home, Johnetta? Bobby, you know he's so fine. He look like Denzel. All my friend girl, they just Jay. Ooh, girl, I just loves him. He make me feel so good. You let him work? Oh, hell no. I'm on him all well rested when I get home. This Bobby. Who we got? This Lucille. Lucille, you sound like you white. Yeah, I'm white, Bobby, but I likes me some thug too. They so exciting.
Yeah, I lived it. You know, that's basically what happened between my 20s and 30s, maybe even into my mid 30s. Is women was enjoying, you know, just criminals. You know what I mean? And a lot of them paying the price right now. Either the dude in jail, he didn't beat her up so bad they left her with kids. And there's this dude on YouTube. I don't know if you've been familiar with him, called Kevin Samuels. Are you familiar with him yet?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of his conversation is wrapped up around these bad decisions some of these women are making. So I'm glad to see you actually talk.
I'll give you a classic example that I saw over and over again because it wound up in front of me in criminal court. Breonna Taylor.
Oh, okay.
Now, people are upset because nothing happened to the police about her getting killed, but honestly, under the law, that was an accidental killing.
Okay.
As a result of not criminal, but civil negligence by the police department as an entity, not any individual officers. They had received an armed and dangerous notification with their warrant. There was negligence in that they were not advised that the warrant had already been served. So when it's armed and dangerous, you can take same precautions an ordinary private citizen should take or could take to keep from getting shot. So they announced busted in the door. Now, the current boyfriend who was in there fired back, but you notice he did not get charged with any criminal offense because under the Castle Doctrine, he had the absolute right to open fire upon the attempt of a tumultuous entry. So they had the right to get in there quickly so they wouldn't get shot. He had a right to react to that. And what happened? She got killed in the crossfire. Tragedy. But here is the problem. She went wrong downstream because she was allowing an ex-boyfriend who was the subject of the warrant to use her address as a mailing address and to use her phone number.
Mm.
So I wound in that too a lot. Well, ma'am, you put yourself in this. Don't you know this man was involved in criminality? Yes, but I loved him. I thought you broke up with him. Well, I still loved him. So I he was acting like he really needed it. So that's why you let this person use your address. Well, yeah, I did. I didn't know all this was going to happen. So when they had a raid on a warrant for murder in the first degree against him, yeah, they kicked in your door. No, nobody got shot, fortunately, but somebody got a broken jaw because of what happened.
Right.
So who brought that on? See, you have nice young men like you and others who work hard to do what they're supposed to do. Do you think you getting the soft nookie and the fine form? No, they got a thug they're giving it to, and they're reinforcing, they are boosting the morale of, and they are loving the idiots that do all kinds of harm to where they live. See, if you're a man, you're supposed to make where you live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, opportunity, sense of purpose, ethics, morality, and impose public peace, dignity, and order on your community.
Mm-hmm.
But if you turn around and look at it from an extent that is withdrawn, and then you look at the big picture, the women are supposed to encourage the men in the community to do these things. But instead, the women are encouraging, giving the love and the sex to thugs who are poisoning the place, killing the place, corrupting the children, making it a dangerous place, making it a place where there is no order, there's no peace, no dignity, and the manifestations are interesting. How many times have you been someplace and you get a whoom, boom, 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 in the vibrating license plate from somebody 2 blocks away who's trying to share his cuss word written rap with you, or you in a parking lot and you with your girlfriend or your wife and somebody, hey man, what's happening, man? You see that whole other day, man? Man, there was some fine bees, man. You get some of that blah, blah, blah. Man, will you lower your voice, man? Why are you talking like that?
Right.
And
they do that to you, Judge Joe Brown. I can't believe they talk in front of you like that. That's hilarious.
Well, no, but I'm in the parking lot.
Okay.
So it used to be, remember, hey man, watch your mouth, man. Dude's mama just walked out. Oh man, ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't, that's all right. Now the mama walk in and she cussing worse than anybody else up in the place, talking about whose ass she gonna whip. Now, how does that calm anything down?
Doesn't. No, it's just filling
And
up
then
the
I'm
jails.
very ashamed of somebody like Maxine Waters. I used to live in her district, which was always funky. She didn't do a damn thing for the district. But anyway,
Okay.
I'm from Los Angeles. But anyway, she got on in 2017 and she's talking about spit on them, crash them, do violence to them, throw bricks through their windows. I'm going, damn, what's wrong with you? Women aren't supposed to talk like that. What the hell is the matter with you? Didn't your mama? And see, she's being a hypocrite. The first time she ran for an office, I was still a student at UCLA. It's for a state office.
Okay.
So she had a fundraiser. Now, her district was down in the hood, right?
Right.
So she had a fundraiser out there in Bel Air. It was a pool party.
Okay.
Right down from UCLA. So I showed up, some other people showed up. We in BSU, Panther Party and all that stuff. And we show. And everybody is dressed as a student or in business attire. And most of the people in business attire are stone white. Here comes Miss Maxine in a little white old time string bikini, about to fall off her butt with her tits bouncing all out. She stuffing, oh, they like to escape. And she's switching ass and flashing flesh to all of these white folk to get funding. So I remember that and I look at it now. Yeah, okay.
Maxine
you old,
Waters?
Yeah, I remember back when, baby, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, right. You wasn't too cool about that. You played that Cardi B Kim thing back then. Right. She wasn't bad looking, but you know.
Yeah. I understand. That's
See
cool.
what I'm saying? So it's like, where are we going with this and who prospers? You get a woman who's a good mother and all of a sudden she's not fit because she doesn't understand that motherhood is passe. You know, the schools, what the hell, can raise your children, or, you know, you can get this thing where, oh, the boys are difficult, just raise them as girls. What is that? Charlize Theron witch that adopted those black kids, boys, and turn them into girls.
Right. Yeah, that's sad. But let me slow you down right there, Judge Joe. With all due respect, we've kind of filtered into like almost like a black local conversation, and I really would like to go back to where you kind of skipped over, because you went into maybe a geopolitical conversation or a international conversation. But I wanted to talk to you about, you said that Trump will be exonerated. Is it basically because you think the Republican 19 or so won't vote, won't change their?
I don't think it will. See, the Democrats represent entitlement. They don't think through what they do because we're in the right, ours is going to prevail.
Okay.
Where they messed up is on what they focused on. So the defense team just played a montage of what they said, which were the exact same words in a more inflammatory environment that they were trying Trump for saying. We got to fight. We can't let them take them. We got to take the fight to the streets. And if they don't give us what we want, we have to fight in the streets, you know, fights. And they played the montage. It's kind of like, okay. But see, it's interesting. The New York Times carried the reaction of the Democratic senators, and it talked about they were snickering and giving each other high fives for saying this stuff. So you hypocrites, it's all right for you to do it, but not this man. Even if we don't like Trump, this has gone way overboard. So still, you got a large number of people in there, unfortunately not the majority, who think that it's unconstitutional because it's what they call moot.
Right.
Moot in the law means it may be issued, but it doesn't make any difference now because the situation doesn't apply. Like that's after the fact. You've been divorced for 5 years, so now you want to come back in. I didn't know that he committed adultery. Well, so what? It's moot. You're divorced now.
Yeah.
So in other words, he's not in office, but we want to bring it back up. Well, I think they actually trapped the Democratic Party to get them to do that because they knew what they were talking about is not going to wash for a number of reasons. And it opens the door for going after Biden after 2 years for what happened when he was vice president. But here's the other thing.
Yeah.
If you take all of what Trump said and you have any inkling of understanding and knowledge of American history, you will find that many presidents, from Barack Obama to George W. Bush to Bill Clinton to George Herbert Walker Bush to St. Ron the Reagan to not so much Jimmy Carter, but Jerry Ford when he got drunk, to Richard Tricky Dick Nixon, to certainly LBJ, to certainly Kennedy, to certainly Eisenhower, certainly Truman, and certainly FDR, said a whole lot worse.
Right.
And you have to understand that that's the way American politics works. Like, for example, Harry Truman, when he was president,
okay,
he got angered at some music critics because his daughter was a professional singer and they gave her a negative review. So he had the Secret Service get this guy's office on the phone, told him he was coming over to, quote, "I'm kicking your ass, you son of a bitch." And he had the Secret Service drive him over. So there's a spectacle of the US president pounding on and kicking this man's office door to get in to literally figuratively kick his ass. You son of a bitch. You know, that's why he had the nickname, "Give him hell, Harry." Okay. Eisenhower campaigned as Smiling Ike, but Eisenhower still has a reputation in the US Army for having the foulest mouth of any officer in the history of the US Army. He literally was famous for making lieutenants and captains piss on themselves in his presence when he got to chewing ass. Wow. So, I mean, he said a lot of crazy shit. Yeah. And Kennedy certainly did with that Bay of Pig stuff. And then LBJ, you know, he good old Texas boy. He liked to say, and by the way, I know people have a lot negative to say about LBJ, but a lot of people don't know his history. See, LBJ ran for, forget the running. LBJ set up a school in Texas to teach poor blacks and browns how to read, and he taught in it. Okay. So the local sheriff killed his dog and he got pissed off. He decided to run for office. So he had some of his homies take their pickups and take blacks and browns to register to vote. And then on election day, took black folk and brown folk to the poll to vote him in. That's how he got his first political office. Mm-hmm. Now, when Kennedy got assassinated and LBJ took over, everybody's going, "Oh, civil rights is dead." He got on and he said, "Let me tell you something. Some people going to be very surprised at what I do." He said, "When I represented a small district in Texas, I represented them as best I was able. When I became congressman for Texas, I represented my district. When I became senator for the state of Texas, I represented Texas. Now that I'm the president of the United States, I'm going to represent all of the United States, and that includes the interest of everybody in here. There are going to be some changes some of my colleagues are not going to expect." First one is he withdrew Kennedy's civil rights bill and put in a much stronger one. And he was brilliant what he did. You know, I got it passed. He made it a military bill. He said, "You son of bitches, if you don't vote for these niggers this time, I'm going to expose you as a commie-loving bastard." Because the bill's preamble, if you read it, says, "Whereas the United States of America is engaged in a life or death struggle with the forces of communism and totalitarianism, whereas the troops of the military forces of the United States are our first line of defense, whereas these troops have been long integrated, whereas base commanders cannot command and direct proper response to these valiant soldiers that is due their status as American citizens, be it resolved that we need this civil rights bill to restore equality of condition on the soldiers, airmen, and naval personnel of the United States military." Right. So it's a military bill. That's how he got it over.
Yep, I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, but you see, we don't get into that anymore. We get into symbolism. And it's amazing that black folk were LBJ's enemy at one point, but then they became his close friends, and all while the white folk, the hippies, were hollering about he caused the war, or he didn't stop it. Black folks stood by him. And when he withdrew and said, "I will not run for off re-election, and I shall not accept the nomination for my party to run. I no longer wish to be party to dividing this great country. Right. Well, when Tricky Dick got in, there was a widespread reaction to what happened. They just say, you know what? Now that they don't have Big White Daddy protecting them in the White House anymore, everything's gone to hell. That and what J. Edgar Hoover was doing to infiltrate all of the black organizations so nobody could trust anybody, made things go downhill and took that lever that we had on the system about having a righteous cause and made it go away. Meanwhile, Hollywood was facing a crisis. The movie industry was going bankrupt. When I was, hell, I could buy whiskey, 67, 68. I remember you could go to a movie theater and you paid 50 cents for an adult ticket. You got 2 features and 3 cartoons and maybe a sub feature. Walk in anytime you want, stay as long as you want. Every Thursday, every Sunday, the movies would change. So then they came up with this bright idea of, let's just give one movie, keep it in the theaters as long as we can, as long as people come, and we'll charge $1.25. You got to come in on time and leave on time. Can't stay. And we will develop all these black exploitation movies because we know that black folk, you guys call black now, or do you still use Negro? Black folk, you know, will come and see this and we can get their money. So then they said, well, you know what, maybe, well, we can use this for something else. Well, I mean, you know, man, we can do this. It's good for our cause too, because these black militants are so frightening. And then they started glorifying dysfunction. And like Pam Grier, she's a beautiful sister, but you know, Pam Grier could get knocked out in a brawl and she'd fall over unconscious and a boob would flop out of her top, gratuitous nudity, you know, or she would bend over and her skirt would flop up and you'd see bare ass and she'd forgotten her panties, you know, or this kind of thing. That's just what they did. And they started talking about Max Julian, the Mac. Remember the Mac? He's the pimp. Well, I went to junior high school with Jim Max Julian at John Muir Junior High on Vermont Avenue near Slauson in Los Angeles. And we used to kick that poor boy's ass every other day and take his lunch money. Well, I never took his lunch money, but anyway, he wasn't cool. So to see him playing the pimp Mac Daddy, you know, it's like, oh man, come on, really? Right. And you see, they started glorifying dysfunction. And then they had Black Caesar, where the character played by Fred the Hammer Williams, a former football player. He was the big dope kingpin and he prospered, and the hero was the big time drug dealer who killed off all the drug dealers. And in the final scene, they left about 50 dead folk on the floor of a warehouse after a whole gangster shootout. No LAPD, no sirens, no nothing. And he rides off in his limo in the sunset smoking a big cigar. And everybody looking at, wait a minute, man, you know that's not real. LAPD had been all over that. What are they trying to pull, man? They're glorifying being a pimp and see of the community by being a drug dealer. See, our opinion in those days.
Yeah, that's just a rolling ball. That has continued to today. And that propaganda has grabbed a hold of quite a few people and is still holding on to people.
And then Superfly really hit it. I remember Superfly came out in late 1971 and went over into 72. I didn't go see it, but I saw the lines in LA. And then when I got to DC doing that intern thing, I mean, a friend of mine and I, we drove by and there was a line came out from the box office of the theater down to the end of the block, 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 and then back to the box office where people got their tickets and then got into the line. And so nowadays they have this dysfunction.
Okay. Well, nowadays we have a similar thing, but it has morphed a little bit in Cat Williams. He got popular rehashing that pimp image. But what they didn't know is the guy was kind of smart. He's trying to infiltrate periodically intellect into the community. He's failing, but because it's struggling. He's struggling with his mind. But I hear that. Let me get you back to where I'd like you to get. I know you probably got something to do. So
I'll go ahead.
So the Trump thing is important to me in that I made that the title of our conversation, because that's what we started off talking about. And I understand and saw exactly what you said, in that his defense lawyers just flooded the whole TV system with with the fight like hell coming out of everybody else's mouth. But then there's other parts of this that seem to be relevant. For example, a lot of his followers, well, the weeks preceding his speech on the 6th, he had went into like a silence except for his Twitter. And he also, people were waiting for this big uproar or this thing, and people actually showed up there ready to kill people.
Well, let me tell you what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Again, the parallel is directly with black folk. Back in the 60s and the 50s, when King led demonstrations, Malcolm X inspired people, H. Rap Brown inspired people. You see, the theory is that ordinary people are too ignorant and stupid to make up their minds to do anything, particularly not where it is collectively done. Therefore, the only way these things happen is for an agitator to come in and take stupid flock of people and get them to do this. Now, I know, well, I won't say what I did, but 1965, my girlfriend lived 5 blocks from where the LA riots broke out, all right?
Okay.
I was out there, and you didn't need anybody to agitate us to do that. But then they started talking about outside agitators came in and caused all these black folk who were otherwise peaceful, hell, this is LA now, to go riot and burn the town down, okay? Right. When Martin Luther King did his stuff, it wasn't black folk got pissed off. It was outside agitators came in and they said like this, we've got good relations with our colored folk, and we've always been peaceful until these outside agitators came in and got them to getting all unruly and violent. And it's the same thing. These ordinary American citizens couldn't get pissed off at what they were seeing. Drag queens talking to their young children in school, the marriage institution being corrupted. You can't tell whether it's boy or girls at the bar when you want to find a date. All kinds of disruptions. They're pissed off. So it has to be an agitator, a boogeyman, Trump, to do it. Now, I looked at some of that footage that I got from the news feeds, not from the news media. And in my opinion, what happens is you've got 40, 50,000 folk peacefully demonstrating no closer than a half mile away. You got 800 assembled around the Capitol building, and about 180 or less broke in. Now, and the people that broke in, the footage that I was able to look at through the news feeds, but not what the news media took off of those feeds, I saw a lot of people with pink hair, red hair, blue hair, and that doesn't fit the Trump mega type. That is Antifa. And if you read BLM's site, they still say BLM will assist in organization, communications, and the logistics of demonstrations and protest. You look at what they disclosed they have received, and they've gotten several $1 billion donated to them. And then you notice the peculiar dynamics of the communications and the, what shall we say, logistics that attend something they're involved with. And you see that and you say, okay, this is well financed. There's a central agency communicating this. And if you've seen it before, and remember, I'm a grown man, graduated from UCLA before the 60s were out.
Yeah.
I saw this before, and I knew what I was looking at because, quite frankly, I'd been in some of these planning sessions. So there are certain things that you see when there is a planned activity and certain things you don't see when it is spontaneous. So what I saw was a planned activity. But the planned activity was not consistent with what you would see with the Trump folk. If you want to see what I'm talking about, look at some of the footage on what happened down in Charlottesville, Virginia, where that bunch were doing their thing, and then take a look at what you're looking at the Capitol. You will find that if you look at the Capitol events, it looks very similar to Antifa BLM events where they were protesting some black man being killed by white police, and you got white folk in the name of this dead black man or black men burning down billions of dollars in black businesses, and 47 people got killed. But I'm saying it's not really non-biased because you don't get that coverage. See, if you want to cover it like something's wrong, then why don't you say this has gone too far? We've got 47 people dead as a result of these well laid out and planned demonstrations. We have billions of dollars of property damage all through the country, all sorts of sowed unrest. And I want to be part of this too. Commitments to violating public peace, dignity, and order. This is a problem. This is a manifestation. That's ignored. That's condoned. The people that were shown in that montage were inciting that stuff where 47 people died, billions of property damage done, and nothing said about that. But you're talking about one issue, trying to blame somebody for just saying what I've heard over and over and over in my life. I did not go out during the 65 uprising because anybody was agitating me. I was just part of that young black group that was pissed off at how we had been treated. Mm-hmm. See, I did not need anybody to tell me to do what I did in the BSU to come in. I did it because I thought it was necessary. See, these people think it's necessary. And like they've got places around here where I've got my good old boys that will tell me, Judge, you a man. We can appreciate you. Too many of your people, they ain't men. They shuffle and look at the ground, can't look a white man in the eye. We ain't got no respect. What you think about this here? Saying, I feel resentful that they told me Mr. Trump had to tell me. Hell, I've been pissed off. I got a beautiful granddaughter and a beautiful grandson, and I'm sitting there listening to them perverts talk to them off in them schools, and I'm looking at this garbage that they bringing home about, you know, destroy the traditional family. What the hell is that? Yeah, I'm mad. I don't need no Trump to tell me that. And hell, I've been hearing that all the damn time. You know, this is the South. That's the way we campaign around here. Everybody always mad about something. So, I mean, see, it's an insult to ordinary people to tell them they're too stupid and unmotivated to do anything unless somebody agitates them. So that's going to backfire. The next thing, as a matter of fact, it reeks of what I call agents provocateurs. See, I saw it all through the 60s. Man, who are you? Man, let's throw a brick through the window, man. Really fuck shit up, man. We got to do this, man. Wait a minute. I know you, man. You're a detective. I'm not a detective. Yes, you are. They hauled us in about that murder case, and you were sitting over on the far side of that detective bureau. You were sitting at the second desk from the corner. Yeah, that's you. You, man, this is LAPD, man. And he's talking about, let's throw some bricks through the window. Agents provocateur. See, there's certain patterns you see, especially when you're familiar with them. I said, oh, I see what I see. You know what that's like? Out hunting with a neophyte, and you're looking down at the sign, and you say, there was a big buck passed through here about an hour and a half ago. There were two smaller bucks that came through about 30 minutes ago. And there were two large doe, one fawn, and a couple of small doe. How can you tell that? Because I can read the sign. You see, if you know what you're looking for, you can tell. It's like a doctor coming in, and what seems to be bothering you, he can read the symptoms because he's got knowledge, expertise. I looked at it and I said, I can read the symptoms. This is agents provocateur. This has been planned. This is not the Trump folk. Because first off, if it had been the Trump folk, I assure you more than 800 people would have split off to go surround the Capitol, and you would have had maybe 15, 20,000 folk around there instead of almost a mile away in the park environment. See, basically having picnics.
Okay.
You know, DC, the weather was relatively warm, and these folk came from places where it was cold, getting ready to snow. So
Right.
I'm looking at that. I say, oh, this is a setup. And look, don't nobody on the Proud Boys got pink hair. Don't nobody in Proud Boys got blue hair. Ain't nobody in the Proud Boys got streak blonde and green hair. And that fool's got rainbow stuff on. And then ain't nobody in the Proud Boys wearing all black. That's how you can tell. You saw that all black. You know what they wear? Camouflage, multicam and woodland camouflage. Didn't see anybody with woodland camouflage or multicam. They all had on black. That's a classic giveaway. You're looking at Antifa.
Interesting. Very interesting. Now
you got to know what you're looking at. So I'm looking at, oh yeah, they're in Antifa's uniform.
Damn.
Yeah, even the caps. And did you see the ones that had the shields? They all got these uniform shields, look like they're Roman legionnaires. Make them out of plywood. And say, where'd that come from? That's not Proud Boys. They don't play that.
Right. Okay. I understand where you're coming from now. I'm going to go back and look at those. I have no real defense or opinion on what you just said. I did feel like those were Trump supporters that broke in, but I didn't have the eyes that you have. So I got to go back and look at it at this point.
Yeah, and see, here's a propaganda technique I studied in political science. Do something and blame your enemies. That's Reichstag 1934. The Nazis burnt the thing down, right? So they made it set up to look like the communists did.
Right.
And speaking of which, it's all over again. When did all this censorship come into play? It started, but let's put it this way. I'll give you an example. So even if you hate Trump, look at this, just as an American.
Okay.
All through 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, what did you hear? The Russians hacked the election.
Right.
So that Hillary would lose and Trump would win. That was on CNN, Fox, counter on Fox, rather, CBS, ABC, MSNBC. All the news services were pushing that. Everybody was pushing it. They were talking about it in Congress, on the talk shows and everything, over and over again. Now what happens? You say there are some questions about what went on. Some people want some answers. We need to investigate. Associated Press has declared there was no fraud in this election. This will not be permitted because this causes public unrest. So forget who it was against. I just realized that you had two sides. One side, they could talk about the other all they wanted. The other side can't even imply that there might be something to look at. This tweet has been removed, or this tweet has been blocked, or this video has been removed from YouTube, or Facebook has censored. So you can't say anything. And one of the things I learned in propaganda, two that might apply here. I mentioned one earlier. Your true enemy is the one who you cannot use a pejorative to. And the other one is your true enemy is the one that censors anything you would say about them, whereas they can say anything about you. So we can't say anything about the left or gay, but they can say all they want about norms and breeders. You know, they call us that.
Okay. I didn't know that.
I was scanning. I hadn't even realized it. It was one of these shows, and this guy was saying, "Oh my God, they're breeders. Oh, how disgusting!"
I heard that one. Yeah.
These norms. Oh Jesus!
I never heard that one. Okay.
Norms.
Yeah, I never heard
the queer. We queer must queer the country up. It's our duty to mankind to get rid of these breeders and norms who just mess everything up. See, so a lot of people are getting the sense of that. It's like, why can't I look? He said, Jesus, one of them said, Jesus Christ, Judge, a few years ago, we couldn't even talk about sex in school. Now they're teaching homosexuality to first graders. What the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
See, that is, and the other thing we're forgetting is that there is this proverb: you can get much accomplished if you don't have to take credit for it.
Mm.
See, that also says you can get a lot of accomplishment done if you can blame what you're doing on somebody else.
Right. Interesting.
And that's like, you know, the mob used to do that. They'd have a fall guy, a scapegoat who would take the blame, and the villains got away. It's classic. It's human nature.
Right.
You scapegoat people. See, that's what I'm more concerned about. In the scheme of things, it was small potatoes. I don't call 200 or less a riot.
Okay.
See, I'm used to, my perspective, I'm in Los Angeles, California. It's in August 1965. And I remember standing on a slight hill, and I made a 360-degree sweep of the horizon, and everything was on fire with heavy black smoke.
Damn.
From a few feet away from where you're standing to way out on the horizon, looked like the Army Air Force had done a firebomb raid on Japan.
Right.
And I'm looking at that, and I know they have a division, 15,000 National Guardians in there with M113 armored personnel carriers and 30 cals with live belts of ammo in there on Jeeps on pedestals. And they have machine guns set up on the Harbor Freeway, you know, to control miles, long sweeps. So can't anybody get across if anybody tried to. And I say, now that is a riot. This little mess where you got the same 150 people night after night participating in what I call spring break unruliness is not a riot. And then I also look at this, if you ought about inciting, I found from practicing criminal law, you tell a would-be crook that you can guarantee that if he's doing this, he's going to get you out on bond and get you a lawyer. That is inciting the hell to commit him, get him to commit criminality. So here we have Mrs. Imhoff is one of the sponsors of an organization to bail everybody arrested for this unruliness for the first part of the year out. When they burnt down portions of Chicago, they broke windows, committed vandalism, broke into sporting goods stores, and she's working to get them their bail set up. You know, so they get the $50 bail set up, the same 150 back the next night. They're bailed out next 150 night. And the only ones didn't get out were black folk. They stayed in jail.
Right.
So you got the same 150, 200 people night after night for 6, 7 nights, and they are tearing stuff up, breaking stuff up, breaking the law, and nobody's even raising the bonds. So in other words, you just got out on a $50 bond yesterday. This is the third time, raise it to $2,000. You know, raise that to $5,000. This is the 7th time you've been in here on it. Raise that to $10,000. Make hell, raise it $100,000. Now get out on that one until we resolve this case. See,
well, you know, that's one of the topics that's happening here. Kim Foxx is taking away the cash bail based on the fact that only the poor people end up staying in there.
See, there's another part of cash bail too. As presiding criminal court judge at one time, what happened? Well, administrative judge of the criminal courts twice. What happens is you have to have hearings on bond companies. Now, bond companies are supposed to require 10% down.
Yeah.
They can charge a processing fee, and they can charge a 10% premium.
Okay.
Of the bond as a fee. So what happens is they will work with poor people. And if grandmama got a property, which typically grandmama does, or great grandmama, and the property gets put up, the company can put down 5, 10, 15% and pay the 10% premium in installments. You put that in place and poor people can get out. It used to amaze me. Somebody never had a job, you know, dropped out of school in the 4th grade, and $50,000 bond can be made on him because great granny's house is up and grandmama's house is up,
Yeah.
you know, and mama put up 2 cars she borrowed from a boyfriend, put up.
Right.
Not left, but just as collateral.
Yeah.
But you see, you wipe that out and you put it on a basis of the way they do it, and you start getting a lot of poor people locked up, can't get out of jail. The other thing too is there's this trend that I don't approve of using bail bond as a punishment. Now the Bill of Rights says no excessive bail, only what's necessary to ensure that someone will appear for the balance of the proceedings.
Mm-hmm.
So why'd you set this $5 million bond on this gentleman? Why'd you revoke Mr. Cosby's bond? He ain't going anywhere pending the outcome of the appeal. I testified at Wesley Snipes' sentencing hearing.
Right. I remember.
You know, he didn't get convicted of defrauding IRS. That wasn't what he got convicted of. He was indicted along with 11 other people. He was the only one of their 4,200 clients. He was the only black man. And he was convicted of 3 counts of, get this, failure to file a complete set of returns. So what happens is at the sentencing hearing, IRS had a check for him for more than $250,000 for overpayment of the taxes.
Right. I remember.
Actually, he kind of got busted because of the incompetence of his attorney, a guy named Meacham down in Atlanta, who gave one of the most piss poor performances I've ever seen. But in the process of this whole bit, we went into all of these things about bond. And here's Mr. Snipes, and the government is saying, Your Honor, we move that Mr. Snipes be taken into immediate custody and his bond revoked. The judge kind of liked him. They said, government, the court gonna deny that. So not only is the court gonna let Mr. Snipes remain on this bond, the court is ordering that his passport be returned. Now, Mr. Snipes, the court is very impressive and very impressed by the work you've been doing for the United States government here and helping out the nation. And even if your lawyers don't quite get the idea, the court do. So you may go leave the country, just make sure that all appearances are covered and accounted for. You hear, Mr. Snipes? Yes, sir. Return Mr. Snipes' passport to him forthwith. You see, so that is abuse of process.
Right.
By trying to sit there, oh, we got a conviction, let's get this. And see, the press played this up because guess what Wesley Snipes did? He was a real deal. My friend, Dr. Stewart, the martial arts grandmaster, was his bodyguard, but Wesley knew the karate for real, so he did his own stunts. Right. Next thing, he's got all these letters that impressed the court. We got Colonel here, Major General so-and-so here, Doctor this, Doctor that. And Wesley, his lawyer didn't get it, but the judge got it because I put it in the letter and some others did. Wesley Snipes had a condo at Ground Zero. He had a home in New Jersey. He's supposed to pick his wife and children up and gone to the condo, but a plane got delayed, so he missed the flight. And because of that, the family was in the New Jersey home. He hadn't gotten back from overseas, and if they had gotten where they were in their condo at Ground Zero, they'd all been dead. So he was pissed off at that. And it came out that Wesley.
You said he. Who is he? Who is the he that was pissed off at that?
Wesley.
Oh, okay.
He was pissed that they almost killed his family, but for the circumstance of a flight being canceled due to a delayed connection.
Okay. Now, give me the connection to how that's irrelevant to this.
In other words, where it was is this. In the proof that we had set up with his wife, who is Asian, and some lawyers, not his defense team, we were showing that Wesley Snipes should be put on probation for 3 misdemeanors because he had aided the United States government in its fight against terrorism.
Okay.
He was further motivated by the fact that they almost killed his family.
Okay.
See, Wesley, well, it came out in trial. Wesley essentially was an agent for the United States who was playing spy, using his appearances in movies and stuff abroad to deal with acquiring information for the United States intelligence community. So he had all of these letters from NSA and everything where he had done this, he had saved this, he had prevented this number of people dying, and he was particularly motivated because these terrorists almost killed his family and him on 9/11, but for fortuitous circumstances.
Right.
Well, the idiot he had as a lawyer, Meacham, didn't get this and kept trying to go off, and the judge said, "Jesus Christ, Mr. Meacham."
Yeah.
He said, "The court is so impressed by these letters. Why don't you put on one of your character witnesses so you can give the coach something to hang his hat on?" Right. That subject you bringing up is on page 11 of your brief, about halfway down. The coach read it. Is trying to do you and Mr. Snipes a service by resetting the motion for new trial until after sentencing. Usually it comes before. Why don't you wait till then? So we started off like 9:30, 11 o'clock. "Mr. Meacham, can you please put on character witnesses?" "Well, Your Honor, well, it's your case, Mr. Meacham. So we're going to break for lunch." The coach strongly suggests to the defense that they put on these character witnesses. So we come back and he puts on a little white girl, the little run on, and I'm about to fall asleep. And somebody said, "Judge, is it as bad as it looks?" I said, "It's worse." The judge just stopped. Said, "Little lady, let me say something. The coach swore you in so you could practice in front of it. You're 32 years old. The coach been on this bench for 36 years. That's 4 years longer than you've been breathing the air on this earth. You trying to impugn that the coach don't know anything about these sentencing act? Look, the coach tired of this. We are taking an immediate recess for 15 minutes. You will call witnesses. In fact, the first one's going to be Judge Joe Brown. Then we're going to have Dr. Stewart. Then we're going to have Mr. Muhammad. Then we're going to have General so-and-so. And we going to go proceed with what we need to." So he called me up and he started the questioning. And I went on. The court started cheering. It's, no problem. But thank you, Judge Brown. It was outstanding. Miss Dr. Stewart got outstanding, Dr. Stewart. I'm glad to hear this. We got a good American citizen. So instead of proceeding with this fool want, "Mr. Meacham, what is wrong with you? Jesus Christ, the coach trying to give you everything except it written in stone as to what you got to do, and you being hard-headed won't do it. You ain't giving the coach nothing to hang his hat on. The coach gonna have to sentence your client to jail if you don't at least argue the effects of this." And this fool didn't get it. He's too busy on Atlanta Housewives, which he literally loves appear. So, I mean, you get these things where you see the bond, where the government is asking that this man's bond be reset. You got an old Southern judge who's saying, "Hell no, this man does not need to have his bond revoked because of the service he's given to the people." And when you had Mr. Cosby, Dr. Cosby, with all he's done to promote the family and decency, and you got this witch hunt going on, you don't revoke that old sick man who has been an honorable man and put him in jail for something that basically what they convicted him on really he wasn't charged with. It was an allegation of him doing something 51 years before the trial. So that is just inappropriate. He should not have been in prison, because Bill Cosby should be on the original bond pending the outcome of the appeal. See, that is a travesty of American justice. That is a travesty allowing mob justice to take over. Now, that's a long story, but that just has to, that gives the background for that whole thing about this bit about canceling cash bonds. It sounds good because people think cash means you got to have money assets, but you see a lot of these bonding companies will work with people they know on credit. Grandmama's got grandchildren and children and nieces and nephews and everything that they've represented, so they know they're good for the cause, and they get out.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to simplify. I know it's way more complicated than what I'm able to, reiterate to you, but I do think that that's something that is good for our Chicago poor people that are, kind of railroaded by the police at this time. There will it'll be some fallout to that, because there are some criminals that should be kept in jail that might get out on that. But,
let me tell you something about this.
Yes, sir.
Essentially, I looked at the charter and structure of the city of Chicago. Essentially, the boss in charge of the police is the mayor.
Yeah.
If your police are screwed up, go look at the mayor and say, what the hell are you doing? The police didn't even fart without Mayor Daley Sr.'s permission to fart. And with his son in there and with Harold Washington in there, they apologized when they did. Now, see, nobody's got him in line. We had Doc Harrington, who was mayor in Memphis for 5 terms, and the director of police is subject to his whim, and he fired 7 of them because they didn't take immediate steps to deal with allegations of police brutality. So you don't do it, you need to fire them, let them work it out with civil service on Monday. Otherwise, you're getting fired. And he fired 7 of them, and number 8 got it in line, and you got, by the end of term 4, you got little old ladies waiting out on the corner to give coffee and donuts to the squad car that patrol their inner city neighborhoods, which you've never seen before.
Okay.
So get your mayor to get her police in line.
Yeah, that's a big old ball of wax that we're having conversations about. Are you familiar? I'd like to tell you about one of the guys that's in Chicago that's doing some good Black political work. His name is Mays Jackson. Have you ever had an opportunity to experience this, brother?
Indirectly.
Yeah. Okay. You have. Well, I'll send you maybe a link or two. You get a chance to take a look at it. But I do want to kind of close this out right now, because I know you and I could do another hour easily. I love.
May I claim some credit, some connection with Chicago?
Yeah.
My niece's father is my deceased half brother. He was born in Chicago.
Okay.
My old man lived there for a while before the war. I was there doing this intern thing, and I stayed over on 71st and Constance over there. So I still get back to Chicago. I used to get back every other weekend about 15, 20 years ago. So I like Chicago. It's cool.
Greatest city in the world, I think. I would love to get you up here and get you into like a lecture of some type, and that's for the near future when COVID is under control. I'll try to get your price on that, and we'll try to get that happening. But
excuse me for running so long. I'm an old man. I don't know how much longer I got to breathe, so I kind of like to get it out there and not forget anything that might help somebody out in 15, 20 years just because they heard it. That's what old men do.
I appreciate the conversations that you allow me to have with you. I'm just saying, I just have to go somewhere. That's all it is. My girlfriend just walked in here and she giving me the, hey, that's nice and all, but you got to wrap it up.
Well, yeah, mine just sent me a text here that I need to go deal with her too. So anyway. I'm not as good as I used to be, but most of the time I'm better than I ever was.
I love it, Judge Joe Brown. And on that, I will hopefully see you another one time. I'm going to send you some info on our reparations fight up here in Evanston. Maybe we could have a conversation on that in the near future.
Okay, and a little date for you. Look up January 14th, 1865 in General Sherman and see what you get.
Okay, 1865.
Some people call it January 16, 1865 in General Sherman.
Okay.
Orders of the military commander of the district of.
Okay. I
You'll
will
see
definitely
something about reparations in there.
Absolutely. I thank you for that info.
Okay.
Hey, you have a great night, Judge Joe Brown. Thank you.
All right, later on. By the way,
I'm waiting.
At Judge Joe Brown TV on Twitter, and I do not have a blue check because they won't give me one.
I'm already following you, brother.
I know you are. Anyway, yes, that's for your followers.
Yeah,